This is a great inheritance. It is a proud privilege to be a citizen of the great republic, to hear its song sung, to realize that we are the descendants of 40 million people who left other countries, other familiar scenes, to come here to the United States to build a new life, to make a new opportunity for themselves and their children. I think it is not a burden, but a privilege.
This morning, Secretary Napolitano announced new actions my administration will take to mend our nation's immigration policy, to make it more fair, more efficient, and more just.
The DACA policy memorandum was issued by President Obama on June 15th, 2012, as an answer to a stalled bill in Congress called the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act was something that, it was a bipartisan bill trying to be pushed through to become a law, because Congress is the only part of our government that can create immigration law. It was a law that was supposed to be passed, or that was hopefully going to be passed in order to protect a specific group of undocumented immigrants who had come here at a very young age. That bill wasn't passed, so President Obama issued an executive order creating the DACA policy. DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So, in order to be eligible for DACA, you had to have been in the United States on the day that it was issued. This policy was issued, so you had to have been in the United States. Backtrack. In order to be eligible for DACA, you had to have been in the United States from June 15th, 2007 through to the current date at the time, which was June 12th, 2012. June 15th, 2012. You had to have entered the United States when you were 15 or younger, so you had to have been a teenager or younger than that. You had to have been younger than the age of 31 on the day of the issuance of the DACA policy, which was, again, June 15th, 2012. You had to have a pretty much clean criminal record. You had to have received already or be in the process of receiving a high school diploma, a GED certificate, or something equivalent to those levels of certification, or some sort of higher education, for example, already be enrolled in college. Or you could have been an active or former member of the military. And if you met all those requirements, you were given a work permit, which was eligible for 2 years, and deferred action, which meant that you were not going to be eligible for any sort of enforcement action by immigration officials like ICE. So for 2 years, you had basically protection from deportation or detention and the ability to work legally. My name is Sarah Emery. I am the Legal Outreach Coordinator for Canal Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization in San Rafael that works with the primarily Spanish-speaking immigrant population in San Rafael and also Marin County as a whole. So DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, was a program that President Obama created through an executive order on June 15, 2012. It was a program designed to create a pathway, actually not a pathway to anything permanent. It wasn't a law. It was a policy that he created and that the Department of Homeland Security then sent out a memorandum about, giving guidelines for how this policy would be implemented for a certain group of undocumented individuals in the United States. These individuals had to have come to the United States before the age of 16. They had to have been 15 or younger. They had to have been physically in the United States on June 15, 2012, when the program was initiated. They had to have resided here in the United States continuously since June 15, 2007. They could not have been convicted of any serious felonies or crimes or serious misdemeanors. They had to have essentially a clean criminal record. They had to have some sort of either a high school diploma, a GED, or some sort of certificate at the same level of those two certifications, or something higher than that. So they could have gone, already been in college or had their college degree, college diploma, or they could have been an active member or a former member of the armed services. And so this program was implemented and immediately went into effect as of June 15, 2012. And to this date, I believe over 1 million young immigrants who came to the country before the age of 15 have benefited from DACA. And when the cancellation happened, when Attorney General Sessions came out and said that DACA was going to be ended, was going to be wound down over a 6-month period, it was affecting at that time, we believe, 800,000 people in the United States were still current DACA beneficiaries. So what that meant was there were a couple caveats to this cancellation. First of all, it wasn't going to be an immediate rescission of all existing DACA permits. It meant that people who had DACA, which was a 2-year permit to work and a 2-year deferred action from any sort of immigration enforcement. So basically 2 years when you wouldn't be detained or deported for being an undocumented immigrant. So starting September 5th of this year and going through March 5th of next year, 2018, there's a 6-month window when people who had work permits that expired in those 6 months could renew their DACA one last time before October 5th, so last week, essentially. So we had a month. The organization I worked for had a month to arrange to, first of all, find all eligible people who could renew in that time period, arrange a workshop so that we could assist all of them to do these renewal applications, and then send them in before October 5th. We saw a very low turnout of people who were eligible for that renewal process. We didn't see a lot of people, and we think that was a nationwide trend. We know it was definitely a thing in the Bay Area. We're not quite sure why. There might be increased fear. There might be, people thinking, like, what's the point? This program's ending. I have 2 more years, and then what? And then I'm undocumented again. And in the meantime, anyone who didn't fall within that 6-month window, their current DACA is just going to expire naturally. So unfortunately, someone who, for example, had a work permit that expired on March 6th of 2018, they're out of luck. And they will expire, and they will be an undocumented person once again, unless Congress does something before March 5th, or our president decides to once again put off the actual cancellation of DACA. So there's a couple possibilities. Congress passes some form of the DREAM Act, which is, the DREAM Act was the original act in Congress that couldn't get passed, which caused Obama to create DACA. And it is essentially a pathway to first legal permanent resident status, so to get a green card, and then to citizenship for those individuals who had the certain qualifications that I described earlier. If Congress can pass the DREAM Act or some form of the DREAM Act before March 5th, then that is one solution to the problem that has been caused by the cancellation of DACA. The other temporary fix would be President Trump saying, you know what, I'm going to put off the decision for another 6 months and Congress can get their act together, which is essentially what he said until this point, and pass a law to make DACA eligible individuals in some way a permanent resident and then a citizen of this country. Right now, we don't know what's going to happen. The current state is that the deadline is passed for the renewals. No one else is eligible to renew anymore. No more initial DACA applications are being accepted. And we just have to wait and see, and also advocate for these laws to be passed in Congress. So DACA means Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and the policy itself was renewable every 2 years, so the benefits lasted for 2 years. The benefits were deferred action, which means that even if you're undocumented and but also fulfilled all the requirements of DACA, you would not be detained or deported or put in removal proceedings or any sort of immigration enforcement. You would be protected from that for 2 years. The second aspect was a work permit, and this work permit was really important because it gave a lot of undocumented people the ability to work legally for the first time. Before this, they did not have the legal status in order to be able to work. And now with DACA, you don't actually have a legal status, but you have the ability to work. And with the work permit, you also received a social security card, and you were eligible for all sorts of, for example, federal funds, for college tuition, for things like that. So those are the important aspects of the benefits. You're also eligible for a Class C driver's license as opposed to the AB 60 in California, which is the driver's license for undocumented people. You could just apply for a normal license, and that has also now changed with the cancellation of DACA. Now people will have undocumented people who were eligible for DACA, who had DACA, and it will expire. They will have to apply for this new license in the state of California. In other states, they might not be eligible to drive at all. So another popular argument against DACA, and also immigration in general, is the criminal factor. Anti-immigrant rhetoric tends to focus on, all the bad hombres, as President Trump said at the campaign trail, the famous line. And there's a lot of focus on criminal acts and, anything to do with gangs, things like this. Saying that, these criminals are getting these benefits, they're able to work, they're able to do these things, and they've committed all these crimes. What people don't seem to realize is that in order to be eligible for DACA, you have to have almost zero things on your record, like even a DUI, not even a DUI, or any sort of misdemeanor that is above a slight misdemeanor will make you ineligible for DACA. So these are people who have almost totally clear criminal records. They're highly qualified. They have at least a high school diploma or higher. They are willing to work. They are ready to work. They speak, the vast majority of them speak English, if not as well as if not better than they speak their native language or the language of their parents. So to focus on the idea that we are providing criminals or people who've committed crime with a way to be part of our society is just blatantly false, because any sort of criminal act, when it comes to immigration benefits, will make you almost automatically ineligible for something, especially with DACA. DACA, there's a huge focus on the criminal factor of anyone who's applying for DACA. So the focus has been on DACA because the people who benefit from DACA are so relatable to the majority of the American population, because they speak like Americans, they look like Americans. For all intents and purposes, as I said many times, they are Americans. They just don't have a passport. They weren't born here. So they're a very empathetic group because they have come through our school systems. People always say my children are friends with DACA children. Like I grew up with them, or they grew up with my children, or everyone knows someone who's benefited from DACA is a safe thing to say, or has heard of someone who's benefited from DACA, who has interacted with someone who's benefited from DACA. But they are a very small portion of those 11 million undocumented people in our country. And while focusing on finding DACA beneficiaries a pathway to citizenship, which they deserve, it's easy to ignore the fact that our immigration system is totally broken. Right now, there are people who have, for example, they cross the border, and either they are detained, or if you're, for example, if you're a young person, if you're under the age of 21, you'll can be released to a parent. Under the age of 18, you can be released to a parent, and you will given a court date, because you are technically in immigration proceedings, even though you're going to be living your life normally until the court date happens. People who cross the border right now probably have a court date in 2020. And that's like a short waiting time. So there are people who have been in detention centers for years with no chance to see an immigration judge. There are people who have filed petitions for legal permanent resident status for their son or their father, and they've been waiting for 20 years. There is a backlog and a wait list and just a time of the unknown and just of nothing for years for almost every single every single kind of immigration benefit. And that doesn't even go into the fact that our new administration has also shut down refugee entrances into the United States. So yes, it is good to focus on DACA, because if we can get some sort of legislative reform for DACA, it can open the door, in theory, to other sorts of reform. But it is the system as a whole that needs to be fixed, and that's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to happen with this administration, and which is again why focusing on getting DACA fixed or finding some version of the DREAM Act to pass it would be such a big victory. But it would be a big victory within the context of a much larger fight that we have to continue fighting.
Although this clip is from 2015, it does give some insight into how some members of the current administration feel about immigration. So, just what was the Immigration Act of 1924? Understanding the Immigration Act of 1924 requires a little bit of background information. People from China were barred from immigrating in the Chinese. Understanding the Immigration Act of 1924 requires a little bit of background information. People from China were barred from immigrating in the Chinese Exclusion Act. Is that right?
Ready?
Understanding the Immigration Act of 1924 requires a little bit of background information. People from China were barred from immigrating in the Chinese Exclusion Act. In 1917, the taxes for recent immigrants were raised. A test. Okay, I'm just gonna do this part to here.
Just keep going,
Yeah.
and we're just gonna cut it.
Okay, ready?
Have fun doing with this, Happy.
Ready?
Just keep going. I
Okay.
didn't stop it.
In 1917, the taxes for recent immigrants were raised. A test of basic reading comprehension. Oh my God. Okay. In 1917, the taxes for recent immigrants were raised. A test of basic reading comprehension. Why can't I say that? Okay. In 1917, the taxes for recent immigrants were raised. A test of language was implemented, and I just skipped a whole thing. Okay. In 1917.
So my name is Ishmael Azam, and I am the student government president at College of Marin. This is my third year in college, and I hope to transfer this year as well. And I did lead the DACA event, or the DACA protest walkout rally at College of Marin. That was the second protest in College of Marin history, and I did it because the student population at our campus was really in need of feeling comfortable and having a safe space to attend. So that rally was for the students. I myself am not a DACA, recipient, but I am most definitely in favor of Dreamers and the individuals who make this country so much better. That was a very successful event. We had about 200 or 300 people attend. We were on Marin IJ and SF Gate, and in general, it was very community-like. I think that everybody there was very happy to see what we were doing. They were very supportive, and it just brought everyone together in one place. And although there may have been other opposing viewpoints, I think overall in general it was great, and that the students who may have been Dreamers or who have known Dreamers, who have family members or friends who are Dreamers, felt very safe on our campus and felt kind of like hope, that there was hope for them. I believe that Trump's decision on ending DACA was not only an unfortunate one, but one that has put this country in danger of those who are Dreamers. There's 800,000 people who are under DACA and who are considered Dreamers, and for them to now be able to realize that they've been living in this country their entire life, and that this is their home country, that they've been doing everything they've ever done, their education, their benefit to society, the things that they have helped others, is kind of in jeopardy. And to be honest, if I myself was a Dreamer, I would be very, very fearful of what's going to happen next. I think that there's plenty of students. I believe 2/3 of DACA recipients are students under the age of 24. And for those students to know that, or for those students to come to realization that everything that they're working for and that the education they're trying to attain may not even be worth it anymore because they may be deported, or they may, in 2 years, they may not have the ability to work anymore, is just terrifying. And all I can do is give my empathy to those individuals, but I can't imagine what those individuals might be feeling in their personal life currently. I think it's very sad what the administration is currently doing, and that when I myself had first found out with my peers, we were all emotionally sad, and it was kind of like a state of sadness and then anger, and then what can I do to improve, or what can I do to help? I'm in a nonprofit organization called 10,000 Degrees, and majority of the friends that I've grown up with are from this organization, and many of them are DACA recipients. And a lot of them, actually every one of them, is either low income or first generation. And seeing what they have had to go through has really emotionally affected me, and that is why I stand to where I stand today, and that is why I'm politically active, because I want to keep those friends that I've grown up with safe, and I want to be by their side through any difficulty that they go through.
Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea washed, sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands, you storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest toast to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.